So what's going on, y'all? And welcome to Justice for the Series, this emergency special edition. And this really is an emergency. We all saw what happened from the Supreme Court a few days ago with the Louisiana versus Callais case, where the Supreme Court tried to eviscerate the Voting Rights Act. And we're going to talk about that. But we really need to ground ourselves in this historical moment. And so I thought it was important that we convene and that we have a conversation about justice for our Black vote. So Keandra, thoughts? Where are we?
So I've seen a lot of just the chit chat about it on social media naturally, right? But I also am one to think that it's not beneficial for us to panic in this moment. I feel like I understand people being outraged, and I've been giving pushback to people. There's people like, explain to me what rights you lost. I don't even engage those people, but I do feel, I don't know, I'm trying to articulate the word. It's like almost an out of body experience. I can't believe I am living through this in my lifetime. I really can't. But I also don't think that we need to panic. I've seen a lot of people going back and forth about how serious it is, or whether it was completely gutted, or if there's still a chance, or what this means. I've seen a lot of back and forth, and I feel like instead of the back and forth, we need to just unpack the whole thing, educate ourselves, and say, hey, what's next? Because I'm the type, I'm only going to do so much back and forth with you before I want a solution. I'm a very solution-based person. So that's my thoughts. Is okay, we've panicked, we've freaked out, we've even done the back and forth, we beeped a little bit on social media. What's next?
Absolutely. And I think that's why it was important for us to have this conversation. Because
Mhm.
again, I saw the back and forth, and I read all 92 pages of the opinion and the dissent and the concurrence. And I have my own opinions about where we are, both as an activist and as well as a civil rights attorney. But I also have a special guest who's going to come join us in a few minutes. But without further ado, let's kick the show off.
What do you want?
Every headline fades. Every news cycle moves on. For the families, it never ends. And the fight for accountability continues. This is not about clicks. This is not about controversy. This is about the truth. The names that deserves justice. We are reopening and examining the files and the facts. Nothing more and nothing less. We're going to ask questions that people dare to ask. Because justice delayed does not mean justice denied.
Don't shoot! Don't shoot! Can't fail me.
You don't get it!
This is Justice for.
Welcome back to Justice for the Series. This is Justice for Our Black Vote, and I couldn't think of any person better to sit down and have this real, frank, family conversation about where we are than my good brother, my frat brother, my brother in the struggle, Christopher Bruce, who is the local Black man, but in the daytime, he is an advocate for the ACLU of Georgia. So Chris, I'm excited to have this conversation with you. I think it's long overdue that you on the podcast. So tell the people a little bit about yourself before we kick it off. I think you might be muted.
Man, it's good to see you, brother. Good to see you, Black Queen. Right, I'm three things, man. I'm a lawyer. I'm my own law firm, the Bruce Firm LLC. where we're specifically devoted on making sure that Black people in the community, your first run-in with the law will be your last. I'm a lobbyist, as you said, with the ACLU, working and doing everything that I can to protect your civil rights and civil liberties. And I'm a local Black man, meaning that I truly and wholeheartedly believe that our Atlanta Falcons are going to win a Super Bowl and our Atlanta Hawks are going to come back after that devastating loss. Now, I'll tell you why. I'll tell you, don't.
Man,
It takes the faith of a Falcons fan, the faith of a Falcons fan to do this type of work. Okay? You got to keep the faith. That's it. That's more than the faith of a mustard seed, the faith of a Falcons fan to make this stuff happen. So happy to be with y'all. Great intro. And love everything that you're doing. This is really shaping and educating the people, which is exactly what needs to be done. So thank y'all.
I appreciate you. And so we all know we woke up earlier this week and saw our phone go off and saw that there was a case decided by the United States Supreme Court. We have been talking about this case for a while in legal circles and advocacy circles. But once the ruling came down, I think we all had different reactions. First, before we get into our reactions, let's listen to the reaction of the 45th and 47th President of the United States.
Going on the Voting Rights Act, I know you said you haven't seen it.
When did it come out, just now?
No, it came out this morning, but basically very much narrows the Voting Rights Act.
Was it considered a win for who?
A win for Republicans.
I love it.
But my question...
This is a very good... We can end this news conference right now. I want to read it.
My question to you, Mr. President, is that some Republican governors have not responded in terms of what they're going to do. I guess early voting, for example, in Louisiana.
Republican governors what?
Republican governors.
What about it?
Early voting begins Saturday there, for instance. Should they redraw the map in the next couple of
I
months?
would. I mean, it depends. I mean, some states don't need to redraw, and some do. I mean, I know what the concept of the ruling. I just haven't seen the result. Yeah, I would say generally I would think that they would want to do it. Some are greatly helped, and some, it didn't make much difference. Yeah.
And so that was his response. It's very telling. But Keandra, what was your response when you first saw it come across your phone?
Oh, I thought you meant to the Trump video. I was like, oh.
Well, we're going to get to that in a minute, but what was your thought to your response to the decision of the Supreme Court?
My response was, as you said, this is something that we have been talking about for a while, right? So you actually originally brought this to my attention a long time ago. I forget how long, but I know it wasn't something that happened overnight. And this is something that we've been pushing for more people to be active speaking out about. And my honest response is, I guess I was shocked that other people were shocked. And I think that's one of the tough things about being into activism and keeping up with politics and social justice is that a lot of people don't get involved until their hair is on fire, and they're like, oh my God, help me put this out. And I'm like, I told you it was on fire. And I didn't feel like I told you so, but I just took a moment to just kind of digest and process everybody else's sudden outrage with something we have been talking about for months.
Chris, we have definitely been talking about this for months, if not years, about the attempt to roll back rights that were secured, particularly voting rights. What was your initial thought when you saw this come across your phone?
I was actually in Philadelphia with the ACLU, and we have been preparing for this for probably the past 2 years, because ever since the case came up, one of the lawyers in the case is an ACLU lawyer, saying we have to prepare just in case something happens. So when it dropped on Wednesday, most of the lawyers, especially the ones from the Supreme Court, everything stopped. People scrambled and said, we have to get to work, one, to read the opinion to see exactly what happened, and then two, to notify others of saying what needed to happen. But I knew up front, because it wasn't an if, it was a when, they were going to take away our voting rights. So I'm not going to lie. The more information that came out as the opinion was analyzed, actually, the more it actually did touch my heart and my feelings, my emotions. I'm not even going to lie about that. I got to that point where I was saying, damn, how do you go from the people who fought for these rights and won them, and now you have less rights than them? So we are in that situation. But it also turned into a time of invigoration of saying it's time to fight. So it's not a let's just be down in the dumps. It's a new challenge to make us move forward as a people. I just want to make sure that everybody knows and understands what we are facing right now.
Absolutely. And I haven't shared this with anybody yet. I know people saw my tweets as it was happening in real time in my post, but I hadn't shared my real feelings about what happened. As Chris has stated, as Keandra has stated, we've been talking about this for a long time. So we had time to prepare, but still to grapple with the fact that I was the first person in my family born with all of my rights, to now potentially being the last person in my family born with all of my rights, it hit a little different. And anybody who knows me knows that I'm not the type to be down for any amount of time, but I was down for about 30 minutes until I actually read the decision and started going through it and giving my analysis in my mind of what I was reading. I mean, I knew the court, when the court asked for oral argument again, it kind of signaled where they were going. But I wanted to read where they were going and then to process it. And so my initial reaction was, wow, it's 1955 all over again, before Brown, and well, 54. And so, you know, I just think that people need to appreciate, one, the moment we're in, and two, as Chris has said, be invigorated for the fight that is ahead of us, because this is a fight that our generation hasn't seen. And our generation, mine and Chris and Keandra, yours is like right after ours a little bit. We haven't seen Jim Crow. We've heard about it. We absolutely didn't see. We didn't see the codification of bigotry and intolerance. That's what this decision potentially can do if we don't fight back. And so I'm going to transition into what Trump said. I've never seen a president more unaware of what the law actually says and what actually just happened. I mean, you saw in the clip, he literally said, I haven't read it. Is it a win for Republicans? Let's be clear. You're the president of the United States. This is not about red or blue, right or left. This is about rights.
And he's treating it like a football game.
Yes. And so, Chris, can you kind of explain to the people why this is not about red or blue? This is about hard fought civil rights that people fought, bled, and died for.
And I'm glad you put it that way. And I want us to make sure we have a discussion of why were Black people fighting for the right to vote, right? Because we all say, oh, people fought and they died for it. There is a reason why. Black people were not treated justly at all. And we're talking about same, if not better, intelligent level, working, any and everything that you have. Black people have proven that they can do it. And yet they didn't have the right of representation, even though they were being taxed. Remember, representation without taxation, since we're dealing with 250 years of this country of saying this is how we got the independence. And yet you were doing the exact same thing to Black people, not just Black people, all minorities, but specifically Black people. So finally, within this fight of getting political power, because this is what it was about, gaining political power. Why? Because when you gain political power, you gain economic power. And with political power and economic power, you can actually start having a say within your school systems and education, your healthcare, any and everything that has to do with your job, infrastructure within your cities and your roads. You get to dictate where your tax dollars are going. which is what a true democracy demands. So no, this is more about living up to the words under the U.S. Constitution that was embedded for all Americans, which we are. But this is about them treating us less than an American, of saying that even though you are a recognized culture minority, and don't forget, and I know y'all have talked about this, they're trying to take away birthright citizenship. That was something that was put in place for Black people. So they have methodologically taken away our rights. This is just the next step. It is a devastating blow. And I don't think people really realize what's going to happen next if we don't get things together. The less amount of elected officials that are Black that you have, the less amount of Black politicals that you are going to have, the less amount of Black lobbyists that you do have. We already don't have many Black lobbyists in the first place, which means the less amount of time and influence that you have for Black dollars to flow in Black communities. This is just the beginning. So yeah, chime in, please.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Go ahead. So what I wanted to just kind of level set for people, because I know there's going to be people in the comments and say, oh, what about this? I'm not arguing with y'all. What I'm saying is, in a country that is becoming more diverse by the minute, you are seeing the reversal of rights in a way that takes us to either the Gilded Age or slavery. Because when you take away the representation of a people, like we have the Congressional Black Caucus, which will be cut in half, you don't have that representation at the table to make laws. You don't have a representative democracy, which is why we as Black people are saying, as you celebrate your 250th anniversary, we are reminded of the words of a great Negro scholar, Frederick Douglass, who said, what is the 4th of July to a person that has no voting rights? What is liberty and justice for all when your voice is being muted? And let's be clear, what the president of the United States was cheering was the removal of the voice of Black people in the South. We all know that a majority of the Black people in this country live in the South. We have states like Mississippi where you're almost 40%, Georgia 33%, Alabama 30%, South Carolina 20%. You have large representative groups of African Americans, but if we redistrict in Louisiana, you only have one district in Louisiana with one African American potential representative. In Mississippi, you could have 0. Alabama go back to 1. Georgia, maybe 2. In a country that is almost 50%, that's not representative. So I wanted to bring in a clarion voice who, as a constitutional scholar, as well as the 44th president of the United States, he gave voice to what's happening here. And I think we should listen to what he said. You know, he so apropos said that today's Supreme Court decision officially guts a key pillar of the voting rights, leaving legislators to gerrymander whichever way they felt and significantly dilute the power of African Americans. So, Keandra, what do you think the former president of the United States is saying here?
I think that Obama is one of the voices that, even though he was a Democrat, I think that Obama is one of the voices that typically leans towards the better good for all, right? I personally, I was young when he was in office, but I personally never saw him leaning so heavily into one sort of ideology that it significantly disenfranchised and negatively impacted another people, right? So I think that that's where Obama's coming from, is he strikes me, or he struck me, as the type of person and the individual that really believes in the freedoms that were promised in this country, that really believe in, what America at its core is supposed to be, right? And I truly believe there are a lot of Democrats who, as flawed as the parties may be, I believe there are a lot of Democrats who believe that, and they are still fighting for that. So I believe what Obama was doing, and him and any other politician who's speaking up or former representative who's speaking up, I believe that they see our democracy eroding and they're speaking up. And I think that that's what Obama was saying, is that, hey, we're at a dangerous place in this democracy. Like, he was a former president, and he's saying, hey, you guys know it's not supposed to happen like this, right? You guys know this is a big problem. I think that he is a very trusted voice, and he's speaking out to let people know, like, hey, this is not normal. What this person is doing or what these people are doing, it's not normal and it's dangerous.
Absolutely. And Chris, what do you think the former president is trying to articulate with his tweet?
I'm glad you brought me into this, because I know President Obama has been criticized for staying out of these types of fights before. He's always said, as a statesman, I'm not the president, so I'm not going to interfere with the president. He stood up and he said something. And he said, hey, this has gone way too far. Black people, not just black people, like Keandra. Yeah, I'm glad you hit it on the nail like that. It isn't just about Democrat or Republican. This is about our democracy as a whole. This is about, are we living up to the ideals that are set forth in the United States Constitution? He's saying we have gotten to a point that we're not. So him speaking out as a voice of reason and a call into society and civilization of saying, this is where we are right now, and it can only get worse, especially for Black people. I hope he continues this and he helps guide, because, again, Democrat, Republican, whatever, I want the country to move forward best way possible. But if he is that voice of reason and people are going to follow him, then let it be. And let's continue on with educating, equipping, and empowering the people to take back their country.
Absolutely. And with that, let's kind of transition into the actual decision, because I think a lot of people don't fully understand, one, what the case was actually about, and then two, what the majority decision said, as well as the dissent and the concurrence. So the
Can
case.
I ask you something?
Yes.
I'm sorry, I don't mean to cut you off, but I know you two are, I've been meaning to jump in and ask this, because you two are attorneys. And like you said, I read all 92 pages. As somebody with ADHD, I did not read all 92 pages. I'm just trusting your word, right?
Okay.
But I want to ask you if we can, I know we're going to break it down and get into, the real meat of it. But if we can just give maybe, like, if I'm new to politics, right? I found out, hey, this affects me, but I've never heard of none of this before. How would you, Griggs, and how would you, Chris, if you had to give me like the Spark Notes version before we get into really breaking down and unpacking it, how would you explain it to me? Why should I be concerned?
Well, I'll let Chris jump in first, and then I'll.
Oh, I was about to say, man, bro, you read all 90. I didn't.
Yeah, I read 92 pages.
I did.
So,
I got ADHD too. Okay,
so
and
basically, what you have is a dispute between the Black people in Louisiana and the government in Louisiana that was redrawing the congressional districts. Okay. And so in that dispute, the Black people were saying we deserve more representation based on the Voting Rights Act. And the government said we don't have to do this. And then the court stepped in and said y'all did. And so you had to carve out 2 majority districts in Louisiana.
Okay.
And so then the government sued. And they took it to the Supreme Court.
Okay.
And the Supreme Court basically said that strict scrutiny, which means any constitutional right that's being abridged, we have to use the highest test, which is strict scrutiny. And based on strict scrutiny and the use of race, there was not proof of a compelling government interest, and thus you lose those 2 majority districts, and we get to redraw the line. So what does that mean? That means the people of Louisiana, particularly the Black people, just lost their representation in Congress, which means that there's no representation. They're going to have taxation without representation.
Okay.
So in short, for the people in the back, The black people in Louisiana just lost their voice.
Mm-hmm.
Chris?
Which is what it sounds like.
Yeah, this is I'm going to use more Graves. I thought that was a great breakdown. Everything else, even still using legal terms, but still making it clear to people. This is, let's be clear, because I want to make sure that people know specific words that happen. The Voting Rights Act was the piece of legislation that ended Jim Crow. Okay? If you do not have the protection of the law that ended Jim Crow, where are you? You are back to a Jim Crow era.
Jim Crow.
Specifically.
That's
okay?
just math. Simple math.
That's it. Logic. That's it. So when it comes to you being able to vote, it says that you cannot discriminate specifically based upon race, but you have to show the intentionality that is based upon race. During Jim Crow, they would come up with fake rules of saying, well, did your grandfather, was he able to vote? Did he vote? That's not based on race. So it doesn't specifically deal with discrimination, but we know exactly who it had to deal with. Yeah. During Jim Crow era, your grandfather
only the white
was a
slave. Would have had, yeah.
So no, he couldn't vote, which means you couldn't vote either. So they are trying to find a way of making the thing not the thing. The thing is race, and that is the thing. But they try to do any and everything of saying it's not race, but it's specifically race. It is specifically black people. And now without the protections of Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act, it is completely eviscerated, and we're gonna have problems. And I'll add one more point to it, a little bit more of a high level. They never specifically said they were striking down the Voting Rights Act. So they're still saying it's still in play. They just completely changed the dynamic. And like Griggs has said, the level of scrutiny that goes along within it. Why is that significant? It takes a lot more to overturn an opinion like that. Mm-hmm. So this may live for generations to come, which means that not just our generation, your generation, the next generations are going to be feeling the effects of again, Jim Crow era, not a civil rights era, a Jim Crow era.
And so I want to jump in here because Chris just made a point that I've been trying to make for 2 days. First off, I want everybody to understand how serious this decision is.
Mm-hmm.
But I also want people to understand the last part that he just said. They wanted to make it seem as though the Voting Rights Act no longer exists, but they did not strike it down. And so I think that's the important portion of this. And I want to pull up the screenshot of the language here. And it says here, this is in the majority opinion here. It says, and again, for folks that are not lawyers, this is how lawyers make a determination of how the court got its analysis and where it got to. So this is in what's called the syllabus. So if you went to school at any point, you understand you got the book and then you got the cliff notes. The syllabus is the cliff notes. The opinion is the book. So we can go back to that first slide. It says this interpretation does not require abandonment of the framework for evaluating Section 2 claims that the court established in Thornburg versus Jingles. That's an important 40-year-old case on Section 2 jurisprudence. The court need only update the framework so it aligns with the statutory text and reflects the important developments since the court decided Jingles 40 years ago. 4 historical developments are of particular note, and then it goes through those developments and talks about how they need to change the adapt, or update the Jingles framework. Now, if we can go to the other clip, it says in the Allen decision, and I've been arguing this for a minute, the Allen decision is the decision that came down from Alabama, 2023, which is 3 years ago, that said Alabama could carve out a new supermajority district, which is now Terry Sewell's district. This ruling says nothing in Allen dictates a result that differs from the one we reached today. The decision in the case was based on the state of Alabama specific argument that its race-neutral benchmark was necessary in redistricting. Then it starts talking about Allen versus Milligan. It talks about the brief, but you go down to the bottom portion. It says here, we reject the single view, Allen, in short, was about whether Alabama's novel evidentiary standard required a change to our existing Section 2 precedent. It did not. Now, what does all that mean? What it means is, yes, they have made Section 2 claims a lot harder because it is strict scrutiny on anything that's race-based. So it has to be a compelling government interest, has to be narrowly tailored. And then if we bring in students for fair admissions in Harvard, they added something else in these race-based strict scrutiny cases. I'm gonna break all this down. I know we getting high-level, nerdy lawyer stuff, but they added a time frame on that because they said we cannot use race-based distinctions unlimited. Now, why are they doing all this? To make it harder to prove racial discrimination. You have to actually prove the intent. That is the problem, because racist statutory interpretation is very hard to prove. And so that's why Chris is correct. We are going back to a Jim Crow-esque type statutory interpretation where it's going to be very difficult to prove counting the number of jelly beans or bubbles in a bar of soap to determine whether you can vote, or paying a poll tax when you don't have enough to pay the poll tax. These are all the techniques of Jim Crow, but it's now James S. Crow, Esquire. And so what I want people to take away from this is, one, Section 2 is not dead, which means the 6 cases that the Georgia State Conference and other groups of the NAACP, you saw in that case, Allen was the Alabama State Conference. They mentioned the South Carolina State Conference, and the Louisiana case was the Louisiana State Conference of the NAACP. So shout out to the NAACP for continuing to do Thurgood's work, just like the ACLU is to continue to do the lion's share of this work. But what we have to understand is we got to become Thurgood, because it took a Thurgood to get us to the point that we are right now. And it's going to take a Thurgood to get us back, because if we fighting Jim Crow, we got to adapt Jim Crow techniques to slay Jim Crow. So what I'm saying is this: once we threw off the sadness, we became reinvigorated. I hope everybody watched the town hall yesterday with Kristen Clark, who was the former head of the Civil Rights Division of the Justice Department and now is a general counsel for the NAACP. I hope people listen to folks like Chris Bruce, who is the foremost thinker in Georgia on policy down there at the Gold Dome. Because what we're going to have to do is to reinvigorate the old tactics and then remix them a little bit. I'm gonna give y'all a little bit more in a minute, but I want to hear Chris is synopsis of this, because it's gonna take legal minds to also incorporate the people to build what's necessary to fight this.
Attorney Griggs, that the way that you're putting this, I'm glad that you're getting honor to our ancestors who made us get to this point. And like you said, it was incumbent upon us to keep it. We're not there. So let's just be in the reality. This is the fight. They won a nice battle, but we have to win the war. And it's going to take all of us to do it. So and I know you say you were going to respond to the people in the comments, but I know some people can say, oh, I can still vote. Yeah, but if your vote doesn't matter, if they've completely diluted your vote to say you're not going to get representation, because again, I know a lot of y'all are not voting for $4 gas, because that's what's in Congress right now. Is that if that's what you voted for, let's have a discussion. I know y'all are not voting for not having health care, for changing our infrastructure being depleted, for any and everything within there. That's where this really comes down to. So yes, Attorney Griggs is already at another place of saying they could go ahead and take away your vote and reinstitute jelly beans to make this happen. They could, or they could just say, hey, go vote. That's cute. You might get 12 or 13% of something that is 51%, 50 plus one to actually win an election. And you have somebody who is representing you, your tax dollars, and everything else in your district that knows absolutely nothing about you and is going to completely ignore you. That's what's at the horizon right now. You don't have the political strength anymore, which means that you're not going to have the economic strength or the safeguards to navigate this course of action. So this is why I really enjoy y'all's podcast, because it's not just talking about the problem. Y'all talk about the solution. Y'all talk about how to educate people to actually move forward to get there. Mm-hmm. Problems there. We need to talk about how we're actually going to overcome it.
Absolutely. Keandra, from a layperson, an activist perspective, I want to hear your thoughts.
So I'm listening to y'all talk and give the legal side of it. And obviously that's important, right? Obviously that part is important. But one of the things I focus on and I think people come to me for is mindset. It's staying motivated. It's perspective. And that's what's going through my head right now when I'm sitting here listening to y'all talk, because, you know, I'm not an attorney. I do understand the language, you know, but I'm not an attorney. I don't have the skill or the experience to go in the courtroom and make things happen. But I do know when people are defeated, I have the voice and I use my voice. And I would encourage more people to do that, not to be defeated, to use your voice. You know what I mean? Like I was just about to ask Chris, like, so when you say my vote is diluted, what does that mean, right? I had a question. I ask a question. I'm not upset. I'm not devastated. I'm not panicking. I just want to know what that looks like. And then after I find out what that looks like, you know what my next question is going to be, how can I prevent that? So I encourage a lot of people, just whether you're listening or whether you're seeing it happening online or whether it's happening right in front of your face, if that's your state, I encourage everybody to use their voice, no matter the size of the platform. I've had a lot of people in my comments or, you know, even comment to me personally. They're like, Keandra, can you talk about it? 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 My platform is fine, but say I have 300,000, right? Let's say you have 1,000, you have 500, 300 of y'all can make an impact. If everybody speaks, no matter the size of your platform, you don't have to go begging your influencers. You don't have to go, you know, you don't have to go begging people to share the story and amplify it when you have a community yourself. We have to build these communities. We have to maintain our mindset and we have to use our voice. What I'm seeing, the word I'm hearing repeated a lot is voice. Voice, voice, voice. And right now, our Black voice is so powerful that they are bending over backwards trying to take it away. And I need people to understand. That's the part that makes me emotional, is I need people to understand that's what I have in common with the people who were enslaved, with the people in Jim Crow, with the people and the leaders through the civil rights movement. That's what we have in common with them. Our Black voice, who we are as Black people, is a threat to them because of how powerful we are, not because we're dangerous. You know, not because of any of the stereotypes, but we are a powerful people. There's something about us that's non-tangible. You can't put it on paper. You can't put your hand on it. And they have spent centuries trying to snuff that out. And I need people to understand how powerful that is. And I say that because it matters. It matters whether it's your voice, whether it's your vote, or whether it's your online presence, whether it's you talking to your family, talking to people in the community, or just showing up to the polls to do what you can do. Our voice matters, and it has not been erased because, like I said, it's non-tangible. They can't erase what.
Yeah, I'm not sure what happened, but she was go. That's what happens on the internet when you're speaking
I know, right?
They tried to mute you.
It could have
been.
Y'all
hear me now?
We will not be
I was
silent.
on a
We will
roll
not be
through it and
silent.
said I will not be silenced.
Will
What
not
an
be
odd.
silent. Go ahead though.
Devil busy. That's crazy. Right when I'm saying they can't silence us. That's some shit. That's so funny.
Man.
But I was saying our voice matters. It's so powerful that they have spent centuries trying to erase it, and they cannot erase us. And I need our people to understand that and continue to stay motivated.
Absolutely. And one thing I was taking from both of y'all is this, and I guess I just kept hearing the voice of our ancestors. One in particular, I mean, before I get this comment out, I think we should hear directly from that ancestor, John Lewis.
For the right to vote. Some gave a little blood and others lost their lives. I believe that we should make it simple and convenient for all of our citizens to be part of the democratic process. It should not matter whether you're black or white, Latino, Asian American, or Native American. We should be able to participate in the democratic process. On March 7, 1965, I gave a little blood on the Edmund Pettus Bridge for the right to vote.
And then I heard another young man from Atlanta, Georgia, that I think we might need to hear from right now. Can we hear from that young man?
Words of the founding fathers. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. We must decide whether those words will be firmly etched into the structure of our nation, or whether we will allow our nation to be relegated to a second-rate power in the world with no moral voice. We must decide next Tuesday whether America will take the high road of justice and peace and compassion for the poor and underprivileged, or whether this nation will tread the low road of man's inhumanity to man, of injustice, of short-sightedness. And each of us has a moral responsibility, if we are of voting age and if we are registered, to participate in that decision. I come here to urge every person under the sound of my voice to go to the polls on the 3rd of November and vote your convictions. Now, I know you're intelligent people, and I don't need to tell you who you should vote for. I don't have any fear about that. You know who to vote for. I'm just asking you to vote. Now, just if you need, very seriously, never before in the history of our nation has a candidate for the presidency taken such a negative stand on the demands of our Judeo-Christian heritage for justice.
And so, as we heard from those two ancestors, the last one particularly, he urged us to use the power that they gave us. They gave their lives for the ability for us to exercise the franchise. And what I want everybody to understand under the sound of my voice, the game is not over. In many of the states, with the exception of Louisiana, we're voting right now. And that power to exercise our voice has not been completely stripped yet. And so what I want to remind people, as I looked at the syllabus and I read the opinion and I thought about what we were going to say to the people, I kept coming back to, well, man, our ancestors, when they were slaves, didn't have the power to speak or vote. Mm-hmm. And they changed the course of American history. Mm-hmm. Our ancestors that grew up in Jim Crow didn't have the ability to vote, and they would be murdered for exercising their vote, their voice, and they still changed the course of American history. So if it's our turn to go down this road, we need to understand, one, what the road is paid for, two, what the rules of the game are, and three, we have the same level of determination as they did. And so what I'm saying is, particularly in the southern states, let's just be real, what's going to happen? What's going to happen is they're going to call special sessions.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to redistrict. They are going to gerrymander partisan gerrymandering. It basically means that the party in power is going to cut the districts in a way that the party in power wants. And so across the South, it's going to be red.
So that people who will vote against them that live over there aren't in their district anymore.
Yeah, aren't in their districts, don't have the power to elect the candidate of choice to Congress, or particularly some of them will do it to the state legislatures. So what does that mean for us? It means during those redistricting hearings, we got to stand up and speak out.
Yeah.
We got to build a record. We got to make sure that they hear us. Because if we don't build a record, if we don't speak up, if we don't make sure they hear us, they will mute us. And so at that point, we have to have ingenuity on how we fight back, but understand the rules of engagement. And so, Chris, you've been at redistricting hearings. You have given testimony. Can you kind of tell the people what that is like and what it means for somebody to carve you out of a district to dilute your voting power?
So I'm going to go back. One, great clips, especially the second one. I know a lot of people on here have a platform and influencers. You see how Dr. King had a microphone in his hand? And you see how we're still doing that today? Just to spread a message? Yeah, it's not anything new. We're still up here using the same tactics. We're just doing it in a different way, like you said before, Attorney Grace, just remixing it. But I really do appreciate him being on the mic like that. And that's what Kendra is saying we need to do. We need to express that. When it comes to redistricting, we know that's supposed to happen every 10 years. In Georgia, that can happen at any time, which is why your governor is probably going to call a special session. But I've been to redistricting hearings all across the state in the last redistricting. I can tell you, and we galvanized people to speak out and speak their voice of saying how they were not being represented by their elected officials. Even though they spoke up, a lot of it was not being heard, and you got distorted maps, which is another reason why the ACLU asked Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated in the Georgia district to file suit, because in a lot of those hearings, Black men were not being heard and being disenfranchised from saying, hey, our voices are not being upheld. And I'm telling you, the Georgia chapter really stepped up with this with a phenomenal case with great witnesses to say, which is why we are still in court to this day, controverting those maps. So you do have people who are still fighting for your rights. It is a long road for justice. And what makes it easier and better for everybody, and this is why I'm glad you brought that up, Attorney Griggs. When you speak out, that goes into a legislative record. That goes into something that you can file lawsuits on. If you are quiet and you're silent, people, judges are going to say, well, nobody was speaking out against it, so why are y'all complaining about it? This is a time when your voice needs to be heard. Educate yourself on the subject matter. Make sure that you are being represented. Last thing I'll say is, this is how you really will know. It's one thing for you to know who your state representative or your state senator or elected official is. It's one thing for you to know their name. It's another for them to know your name. So if they are not coming to you and asking for your opinion, or you're not giving their opinion to them, if they can't recognize you by a first name basis, then you're not doing your job. They work for you. Make them work.
I say that all the time, and it pisses people off for some reason.
Absolutely.
What about making them work?
Make them work. Crazy concept, right? I swear I say that all the time on social media, and people get so upset. Like, what are they supposed to do? And I'm like, their job. Literally their job.
Their job. Yes.
And so as we continue to talk about this, I want to ground us in, we talked about the majority decision and what it said, striking down the 2 majority districts in Louisiana. But there was such an eloquent dissent that I think we need to spend some time on Justice Kagan's dissent. Particularly, she says here, at the first stage of this judicial project to destine the Voting Rights Act, the court maintained that Section 5 was no longer needed because of recent decades African Americans attained political office to record numbers. Shelby County versus Holder, and it cites the case. At this last stage, the court gutting Section 2 puts the achievement in peril. I dissent because Congress objected otherwise. I dissent because the court betrays the duty faithfully to implement the great statute Congress wrote. I dissent because the court's decision will set back the fundamental right Congress granted of racial equality in electoral opportunity. I dissent. She talked so eloquently about what the court is doing by opening this floodgate. But then let's also talk about the response that she saw coming. The response was, oh, if they struck down Louisiana's districts, then in Tennessee, the governor said, well, we should call a special session to strike down the majority district in Memphis. And then in Alabama, the governor said, well, maybe we should call a special session. In Florida, the governor actually did call a special session, and they are in the process of striking down the district in Florida. And in Louisiana, in the most undemocratic way ever, in the middle of an election, the governor is in the process of ending the primary election and ordering redistricting. That's the level that we're at right now. That's where we are historically. We're in a time where people will attempt to stop folks from voting as they're voting. And that brings us to a tweet that I have to put up. And it's the tweet from Greg Bluestein of the AJC from our own governor. And I want y'all to read this. It says, just in, Governor Kemp won't cancel Georgia's May 19th primary or rush to impose new political maps for this year's election. But Kemp also signaled to the AJC that he could still call lawmakers back to Atlanta this year to redraw boundaries for 2028. Now, in Georgia, that's where we are. We are at the point where certain political figures who, let's be clear, he won't be governor in 2028. So he shouldn't be worried about what's going to happen in 2028. But certain governors are considering stopping folks from voting, literally disenfranchising people, because a lot of people in the comments, oh, what rights are you really losing? People are having their votes not counted in Louisiana. Mm-hmm. Georgia is considering not counting votes. There have been 157,000 Georgians that have voted in this primary election. There was a consideration, and there is a strong push on social media by certain people in MAGA.
Right wing,
the same folks that was running around here talking about election integrity and election security and count all that stuff, are saying we should stop people from voting. These same people. Now,
rules for thee, but not rules for me.
So that's why it's important that we single out the justices that thought this was a good idea.
Because who are these people? And I'm
Justice
glad you
Roberts.
said it. I'm glad you said it, because I want to get into this. I've been waiting on this portion of the podcast because I like to put a name to it.
Justice Thomas. Justice Gorsuch. Justice Amy Coney Barrett. And of course, Justice Kavanaugh. Those are the 6 people that thought it was a good idea to strike down the 2 districts in Louisiana and open the floodgates to what's happening across the South. Chris, talk about how extremely harmful it is to cancel an election to redistrict.
It's almost unfathomable, right? Like it gets to a point where you're saying, hey guys, this is beyond ethics, morality. This is a downright evil. Like, what are you doing? If you're already voting, you already voted for somebody. You can't just call timeout saying, guys, that was fun. I'm glad you went out and spent your time to go vote. We're going to do this over again. You may not know who you're voting for anymore because we're going to redraw the maps. You may not know the district. You may not know even the people who are running anymore because we're automatically going to implement it again. Again, your voice is not going to be heard through this type of situation when these things happen. That's why we do have to work harder. That's why we do have to be stronger when it comes to it. Because like I said, it may be harder, but it's not over. But no, I don't think there's been a time in American history. In fact, you have case law that specifically says, no, you cannot interrupt an ongoing election. And I give it to them. They're like, we don't care what the case law says. We're going to do it anyway. That is something that, I don't know, I would say evil is very creative. Let me put it that way. Like you said before, the rules are for them, not me. Not what I try to do. When it benefits me, that is just fine. So all these other states, these governors, anybody who's calling for a special session, and again, I don't care if it's a Democrat or Republican, it's not right. This is not the way a democracy should work. And we are in a nuclear arms race. I want people to come out with a bigger picture for this too. This case was argued over a year ago. This should have came out last summer. It did not. So people expected the case, the ruling, to come out this upcoming summer in 2026. It didn't. It came out right now. It came out right when primary was voting, at the last moment in time that you can actually deal with redistricting. That's on purpose. Remember, your United States Supreme Court is not supposed to be political, and yet this is the most political move they could have ever made. They could have waited to make this ruling and made sure, like Kemp said, I'm not going to stop voting because you're already voting. We're going to wait till 2028. This court said, no, we're going to make sure that everybody's reevaluated now. It just came out of nowhere. That's what really needs to be investigated. Why did they drop the ruling at this time when they normally do not do things like that?
And before we
read my mind.
Before we shift that, because I know Keandra's got a question, but what's the name of the case? Because we always run into this when we file actions in federal court during the course of an election. What's the name of that case that the Supreme Court has said we will not address elections so close to an election? What's the name of that case?
And I was just about to ask you, Griggs.
I think I know.
Yeah, those type of cases. And the FBI is not supposed to investigate people so close to elections, which we know that's exactly the notion they did with Hillary Clinton, trying to kill her chances of becoming president.
Yeah.
What is the name of that case? Now you got me. I'm gonna have to
I'll pull it. Go ahead and ask the question, Keandra.
Oh, my question was, I'm listening to him talking. Chris, you just read my mind, really, is why. That's what I'm wanting to know. Why? What do these people get out of it? And I think, for one, it's important. It's so important that we put a face to who these people are, because I know a lot of people think of like the Supreme Court almost like Big Brother, this just big entity, right? No, this is a select group of people, and we need to figure out why they're operating the way they're operating. Like you said, it's not unbiased. It's very clearly biased. And so that's my question, is what are they getting out of it?
Biased and political.
Very biased and very political. And I'm not saying there's nobody asking these questions. I feel like somebody should, as you said, be investigating this. I feel like we should formally be looking into why this is happening this way.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree with you that we should. And I think that everything in me says that we need to put a name to this. And so I can't find the case right now, but I know for a fact there is a ruling from the Supreme Court that says that federal courts cannot address an election controversy close to an election. I'll update that in the comments once we get done with the live stream. But what I want people to fully understand is what Chris has said. For the most part, in the history of Supreme Court jurisprudence, it's always tried to remain out of the political thicket. That is an actual course, course denomination in constitutional law. It talks about the political thicket and goes over those cases because they don't want to get involved in politics. But
because they're not supposed to, they're the judicial branch.
Exactly.
Yes, this is supposed to be completely fair.
This particular ruling, because of the timing, has now thrown a wrench into primary and potentially the midterms intentionally, because we all understand which way this particular political conversation is going. But the good part about all of this, whether it's the judicial branch, the executive branch, legislative branch, there's a fourth co-equal branch that we don't ever talk about. The people. The people have the ability to stop this. It's just like I said, and Chris just said it, during the redistricting hearings, you can give testimony. Matter of fact, last night on the town hall, that's one of the recommendations of the general counsel, to give testimony at the hearings. It's not just to convince the lawmakers, because I think they've already made up their mind. It's to build the record, because again, what did I say before? I said that Section 2 is not completely gutted. There's a higher standard, but if you build the record, we can get back to the Supreme Court with actual proof of a discriminatory intent, because these folk, one thing I give these folk credit for right now, they're telling you exactly what they're trying to do and why they're trying to do it. So get them on the record and get them to tell it.
So
go ahead.
I was saying, so Greg, so what I'm getting from, because I feel like what you're saying is so important, because I've been having this question like, okay, so what do we do? What do we do? What do we do? What's next? How do you fight it? And it sounds like you're saying, is it fair? No. Is it a hurdle? Yes. But we can fight it by being more strategic in the way that we operate in general.
Absolutely.
Right? So it's going to be harder to prove, but we have to start thinking 10 steps ahead and making sure we have that documentation when it is happening.
Right.
So what I would also say, there it is Purcell versus Gonzalez. It is the Purcell principle.
You're welcome.
The Supreme Court. Thank you. The Supreme Court has said that it will not allow federal courts to intervene in an election issue close to an election. This is one of the reasons why during the 2016 election, they would not get involved in the situation that was going on with the Justice Department because it was too close to an election. But back to my overall point. The point was that since we are building these cases, I want you to remember a case. Remember Brown. But also remember Brown was 4 different cases combined. One thing that Thurgood, through the principle that Charles Hamilton Houston did to take down separate but equal, was to build cases to take the principle down. In this particular case, the principle is not dead. And so if we can provide proof of the discriminatory intent of legislatures, and I'll be honest with you, some of these legislatures in the South are dumb enough to put it in the record. So
I believe it.
Put it in the record.
I was thinking that too.
The second thing, and I hope you guys watched Madam General Counsel. She is one of the most prolific civil rights lawyers of this generation. She also said there's another route, and I want to remind people that the Constitution is very much alive. The 10th Amendment to the Constitution says all powers not expressly given to the federal government are reserved for the states. Let's just say, for sake of argument, and I will continue to say this, that the Voting Rights Act has not been gutted. It's on life support, but it's not dead. But many of the states have Voting Rights Act, and Georgia just introduced one. We didn't get it passed, but we introduced one. If we pass state level Voting Rights Act, you can remove the case from federal court and bring it in state court, where you can, we learned this first year law school. The United States Constitution is the floor of rights.
Yep.
States can build on that floor. So if
Yep.
your state has a Voting Rights Act, sue in state court. If your state does not have a Voting Rights Act, go down to the legislature and
Push to pass one.
demand that it should be passage of a state Voting Rights Act.
Mm.
And
I have not
finally,
seen anybody else say that.
well, Kristen Clark said it last night at the town hall, and I agree with her. And last but certainly not least, vote. Vote, vote, and vote. Now, there was a certain individual in Georgia who I'm going to put on full display because, you know, Georgia's the birthplace of civil rights. And any black person that would have the audacity to try to attack voting rights should be put on blast. So I'm going to put his tweet up. This is C.J. Pearson. He says he's a lifelong Georgian. And he says that there's no justifiable reason for every state in the South to be making moves to redraw their maps while we sit on our hands. It's embarrassing. Now, Mr. Pearson is a young man. He's in his 20s, so I guess he ain't been around long enough to understand what state he's really in. So put the tweet back up.
I was reading
it. I saw you close to the camera. You're like, that fine print.
I said to him, it's striking that the same voices who constantly call for respect for the rule of law and claim voters are focused on election integrity are now advocating for elections to be halted across southern states. I also said to this man, it's embarrassing for, as a black man, a black Georgian, you are advocating for disenfranchisement of millions of African Americans in this state, in a state that was the birthplace of Dr. King and John Lewis. This was John Lewis's home. His birth was in Troy, but his home was in Georgia. So for Mr. Pearson, I just want to say this on my platform. You're welcome to come on my platform anytime you want, so you can be educated on what civil rights really looks like in this state, because we're not disenfranchising anybody. And even Brian Kemp understands that it would be the end of his political career if he halted an election in the state of Georgia to disenfranchise 3.3 million black people. So I just want everybody to understand something. We're in a state of emergency, but we are not powerless. I want to turn it back over to my able co-host. I went off on a tangent. Go ahead, Keandra.
Oh no, you're fine. I'm trying to, and I'm still on the C.J. Pearson. I'm trying to understand what his point was, and maybe it went over my head because it sounded conflicting. He was saying, "There's no reason." What was he trying to say? And maybe it just went over my head.
He was trying to convince, and there seems to be a push in the MAGA sphere or media sphere to force Brian Kemp to do something like call a special section to end the primary election and to have redistricting. And I would clearly point out to the governor, the elections code in Georgia does not allow for that. You know, even if he declared an emergency and delayed the election, you have to have the election within 45 days. It's going to take longer than 45 days to redistrict.
Okay, so I wasn't tripping. It didn't go over my head. It's just bizarre that he would say that. And it's super weird coming from a black man, especially someone arguing with you about civil rights, because it comes across as if he's saying, well, everybody else is stripping the black people of their rights, you guys. We better get going. And I'm just, I guess, trying to wrap my head around why a black person would be pushing for that.
And that's why I had to say something to him. So
I think this goes more towards, Keandra, you're using rationale and logic.
Yeah.
The other guy's not. That's why it doesn't make sense.
I'm
so I'm
being
glad
way
you
too confused.
Right.
Yeah. So what I want to wrap this because this is a special show, and I didn't want to get into the doom and gloom, even though it's a doom kind of time, but I want to leave on a high note, is that we are not disempowered yet. We still have the ability to fight back. And my good friend, Chris Bruce, is one of the best at strategizing how we fight, whether that's legal observing through the biggest marches in Georgia history, or that's lobbying down the Georgia Capitol, or whether that's getting people together to make sure that we invest in our own business structures and running them. Oh, and by the way, he was the president of the Atlanta Bar Association. I mean, the Gate City Bar Association, which is the Black Bar Association here. So what are your thoughts to give people as marching orders as we move into this time?
Well, first, I want to say thank you for allowing me on your platform. Again, very powerful discussion. I love anything that educates our people. And that's when this really comes down to. You know what you should be proud of is being Black. Okay? Let me tell you, this race right here has overcome a lot more than what we're facing right now. And we are going to overcome this together. So your next steps, as not just a Black person, but a person who believes in democracy, again, educate yourself on this issue. Join other organizations who are doing something about this. I can shout out the ACLU. We're in the courts. We're in the streets. We're fighting. We're doing poll observing, poll workers. We get paid for that. We're doing everything that we can. You don't have to do it with the ACLU, but do not do this fight alone. There are so many phenomenal advocates who are doing so many amazing things. Know how to fight and know who to fight with to make the largest impact possible. And if you need help with that, you can contact me at cbruce@acluga.org or follow me on Instagram, Attorney C. Bruce. I can personally help you and connect you with other organizations. But make sure you stay tuned to podcasts like this so you can get the most up-to-date information on how to fight back.
Thank you, my brother. Keandra, what are your closing thoughts on how people can, one, stay vigilant, but two, get involved and push back?
So one of the things I really love that we discussed, or I guess just kind of came out in this episode, is there are so many different options to get involved. And Griggs and I, we're on two sides of the fence where we stand in different places when it comes to getting in the streets protesting. Like Griggs is a seasoned vet. He been in the streets protesting forever, right? And I'm an itty bitty little thing. I see how they doing them folks. I don't know. I don't feel like I'm a foot soldier. I'm not going out to the protest. That's just where I stand at. I feel like my talents are better served somewhere else.
I've seen you at protests before.
She's been at protests.
You've seen me at events. You've seen me at events, and I only stay for so long if it's a protest. And I said all that to say because there are a lot of people who genuinely fear for their safety right now. And I'm not the type that's going to give you pushback about that. But as you have heard during this episode, there's so many ways you can get involved. Maybe you're non-combative. You don't want to go to the protest, but you can show up in person in other places. You can go to the city council meetings. You can go to the polls, first of all. You can go to the Capitol or whatever space you feel safe in. I do feel like it's gotten to a point where we got to bring it off the internet. And I'm known for my activism that's digital. I'm literally a digital activist. That's how I came into this space. But I do feel like it's to a point where we need to be boots on the ground in person more too. And that doesn't always have to look like a fight. It doesn't have to be the combative protest. If you're afraid of that, there are other places I really feel like our voices can be heard, and we need to be better about utilizing those. And I'm personally going to start incorporating that more into my message.
No, I appreciate that. And yes, there are so many ways that you can get engaged. Everybody doesn't have to be outside. I particularly like being outside. It's fun. But no, you don't have to be outside.
It's all good.
And I did see one question in the chat. Mr. Brown asked, do I have to go to my legislature capital? Yes, to get the Voting Rights Act introduced. Go to your legislative state capital and do that. But what I want to leave people with is this. This is the 2-minute warning. The Louisiana case was a 2-minute warning. We are in the final stages of them trying to roll us back to either 1950 or 1850. And we have to make the decision whether we are going to be Frederick Douglass, Thurgood, Fannie Lou Hamer, Ella Baker, Dr. King, Coretta Scott King, recently transitioned brother, Reverend Jesse Jackson. We have to make that decision on what we're going to do. And I think that this particular generation is better equipped than they were. We are literally having a town hall meeting on the internet right now where we're giving marching orders. This would have been a mass meeting in Dexter Avenue Baptist Church in Montgomery. But what I want you to understand is there are different ways to attack this. You can organize people to go vote. You can organize people to go lobby. You can organize people to write legislation. You can organize people to file lawsuits and be plaintiffs. Some of you can decide to go to law school and become civil rights attorneys, because let's be clear, the only reason we have Black attorneys is civil rights attorneys. And so what we need to do as Black people and as people of good conscience that are allied with Black people, we need to understand that the Black people are the canary in the coal mine. When they come for our rights, they coming for everybody's rights.
It's a trickle down.
And if they will take your voice, which is your vote, they will then take your life and make it seem like you appreciated it or you asked for it. We have to understand who we are fighting and the fact that they don't fight by the rules. One thing I know about Black people, if we fighting somebody that don't fight by the rules, we adjust the rules to be fair and make sure we win the fight. Yes, the Louisiana case was a loss, but that was a battle. We will not lose the war. I understand that many of us come from ancestors who came off the Middle Passage. They never seen this land before, but they dreamed of you being their wildest dream. This is that time. I mean, I can't think of anything more pressing than us losing the right to vote, us losing the ability to have our voice heard, us losing the ability to have a legislative Black caucus that stands up for Black people. I mean, we literally talking about what happened after Reconstruction. When Black people elected 33 state representatives that were never seated in Georgia, and then our voting rights got taken, and it took 100 years. Again, that's what's happening right now. So what I want to leave you with is this. There are marching orders in this podcast. What I want you to do is to like, share, and make sure that you get this to the people that need to hear it, that all hope is not lost, that we are not in a dark cloud where we just, oh, woe is me, we're going to give up, we don't know what to do. We've been here before. Let's act like it. And let's get prepared. If you are not connected with an organization, get connected with an organization. ACLU, NAACP, Black Voters Matter. There are so many others that are doing this work. Get connected and make sure that you understand the assignment, because you don't want to be that person 100 years from now when your family members are looking back at this time when the new civil rights movement emerged and you was on the sidelines tweeting, talking about, oh, woe is me, I don't know what to do. Oh, all hope is lost. We just need to do something else. That's not in the cards. So on this emergency episode of Justice for Our Voting Rights, it's time for us to be about our voting rights. I love what Keandra said. I love what Chris said, but I'm going to leave you with this. There's one person who we haven't heard from in this podcast, and that's the person who signed the Voting Rights Act. So we're going to leave out with the words of Lyndon Baines Johnson, a Southerner from Texas that was able to convince members of the South to give the franchise to Black folks in the Voting Rights Act. Let's leave out listening to Lyndon Baines Johnson.
Or his religion, or the place of his birth, is not only to do injustice, it is to deny America and to dishonor the dead who gave their lives for American freedom. Open your polling places to all your people. Allow men and women to register and vote, whatever the color of their skin. Extend the rights of citizenship to every citizen of this land. There is no constitutional issue here. The command of the Constitution is plain. There is no moral issue. It is wrong, deadly wrong, to deny any of your fellow Americans the right to vote in this country. There is no issue of states' rights or national rights. There is